Hello, Kathy.
How did yours go earlier?
I haven't had one earlier. This is my first live session.
No. Pitch sessions.
Oh, the pitch session. Sorry, I was like, what did I miss?
Sorry.
No, it went absolutely fine. He just had the one step, so it went very smooth.
Awesome.
Yeah, I felt bad kicking them out of the main room. They were having a great conversation, but I think one just gave the other their phone number and they continued it on their own.
I totally blanked on that. I don't know why that didn't occur to me, but it didn't.
I mean, I'm not technologically apt on any of this, so.
It's fixed for tomorrow, and that's all that matters.
It's working. This is our very first virtual con. We're getting it figured out along the way, but.
Yeah. I think this is the first full panel I'll sit through since this morning.
Nice.
So I got to see part of Tim's and then the first part of Kay's. And then I talked to Steve for like an hour.
Oops.
Which was fun.
I feel like I've met him at a different con before. His face looked so familiar. I'm pretty sure I've met him at another con.
You did.
He was a really nice guy.
He was at WorldCon.
Okay.
In Kansas City.
Thank you. I was like, I've met him. I just haven't. I assumed Capricorn because.
I think he's been at Cap a couple of times too. I know he knows Dee and Donna pretty well.
Okay.
Jake.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
So your setup is professional looking.
Thanks. It's because of the podcast. So hang on.
I was going to ask you,
me,
Jacob, how do you prefer people refer to you? Because I feel like I don't do it right.
What do you mean?
What should I call you during the panel?
Jacob's fine.
Okay. Am I the only person that calls you Jacob?
Jacob. I usually call him Jacob, actually.
Some people, yeah. I mean, everyone from high school calls me Jake, so I don't think we went to high school together, so that's fine.
I think I would have noticed that. Okay, before you get too far into everything else and everyone else shows up, I just have to mention I wore my Craftleet t-shirt.
Nice.
In honor of. Nice.
This is usually
I do have to tell you, Anna.
Yes,
something tragic happened.
Uh-oh.
Stabby McStabberton fell behind my desk.
Oh no.
Oh no, it gets way worse. And was found by a very curious puppy.
Oh no, did he eat it?
Stabby didn't make it.
Oh no. Is Pup okay?
She's fine.
Okay.
She got yelled at for that one quite a lot.
I bet.
She ate his face right off. I was so sad. I was like, no.
Well, I'm just glad she's okay because that's not good stuff for them to eat. That's not meant for the intestines.
She just tore it up and then.
Oh, good.
Removed his innards.
Yeah.
Mine ate a pie bead.
Oh well, I'm sure that she pooped it out too.
Yes, she did, but I was not the one looking for it.
And also,
I would have just donated them in the backyard.
Yeah. Well, you want to know that it came out.
So, hey, look, it's 4:00. So we might be starting any minute now. We're waiting on one more person who is supposed to be on this panel, and
leave the.
Yeah, and Kathy. Then I was going to say sorry, but I don't actually think you're supposed to be in here. Okay, so I'm just waiting on Shelley, and then we'll get started. Wonderful. I know she's here, but I think she's still figuring out the technology.
There she is.
Shelley, hello.
Shelley. This is so
welcome. Yes.
Poor Vicky. I better send her a note and apologize.
We were done in there. It's okay. We were just doing the chatting at the end. So.
Dear me.
I was glad I was there to see it.
It's a good thing we know each other well.
Yes.
There she is, being gracious. Thanks, Vicky.
Wonderful. Okay, I think it is after 4:00, so we can go ahead and get started if everyone would like to, although I think everyone's been starting a minute or two late just because we're going right up to the end of the hour in the previous ones and everyone's kind of cycling through. So I'll give everyone another minute as we get settled. As you come in, if for the people already in the room, if there's anything in particular you were hoping we were going to talk about today, please let me know in the chat and I'll try to make sure we get to that topic. Otherwise, we're going to be bouncing around all over the place and it's going to be super fun. But let me know if you'd like us to focus more on the actual combining crafting and writing side of things, or if y'all are just here to have fun talking about crafting, because I can just talk about crafting. That's awesome. But we can keep it tied to writing if we need to stay focused. So
That would be good.
I'm sure we'll have category A and B.
right. We can cover all fields. Okay, if I stalled long enough, can we get started? All right, I'm going to call it. Let's get this started. I am Anna LaVoie, your moderator for this lovely whatever time of day it is where you are watching this. I am, sorry, dealing with all this technology while moderating. Hey, okay, so I am a developmental editor, which is all sorts of fun. And on the crafting side of things, I do a little bit of everything. I've done metalsmithing, glassblowing, crochet, cross stitch, quilting, watercolor, paint by number, coloring. If you name it, I've probably tried it once. Needle felting, that was super fun. All sorts of things. So I'm a little crafty and I like to craft and I love the idea of combining it with storytelling. So that's me in a very large nutshell. Let's go on to Deanna. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Deanna. I writer, editor for Root Creek Books. I am also a crafty maven, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I sew, I paint, that's my COVID hobby. I started watercoloring during these COVID times and I got pretty okay at it, so I teach it now too. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how that happened. I make all kinds of things. I garden, I cook, I believe very strongly in the philosophy of if you want to know what it's like, you should try it, and then it makes your writing more authentic. So that's where I'm going to leave it.
Wonderful. Jacob, please go ahead.
Yes, I'm Jacob. I'm, I guess, a writer, and I used to teach creative writing as well. And the craft I'm here to talk about today is brewing. So I'll leave it there.
Excellent. And Shelley.
I write full time and I taught in the Seton Hill program for 17 years and I'm doing in 2 weeks, I'm defending my PhD dissertation and that's terrifying. I would like to be able to craft in my spare time for relaxation, but it seems that it all gets sucked into the writing somehow. So that's kind of my focus for this session is how to do that.
Excellent. Yeah, having perspective on how to find that balance would be very helpful. So thank you so much for joining us.
What is this word you speak of?
Right, the eternal struggle we're all looking for. Wonderful. Thank you all for participating. Thank you everyone for coming to chat. I'm very excited about this because, as I've made clear, I could talk about crafting all day, and I love incorporating that into writing because I feel like it adds a layer of authenticity to your characters and a layer of realism to your story, because people aren't just about the main plot line of the book that you're watching. They have the actual life they've been living up to the start of the story on page one, and they still are living that life in between the actual plot of the book happening, and finding that balance or being able to show a representation of what that life looked like makes the character feel a lot more real. So I kind of dove right into the deep end there, but would anyone else like to talk about their experiences in kind of tying in crafting into writing and using that crafting as a characterization tool for your characters? I think, Shelley, you would be wonderful to start us off with this.
I took watercolor lessons thinking that it would be another outlet for creativity and that I would, again, find some relaxing thing to do in between books. Well, as it turned out, I realized that watercolorists, as 3 of the 4 of us, and maybe even all 4 of us know, see the world differently. You see the world in depth of color, in differences in color, and even shadows don't look the same to me anymore. I'm like, oh, purple, look at that phthalo blue. So I was thinking, I was working up a new series, and I thought, what if my sleuth were a watercolorist? The most observant person I could think of, looking at color, looking at the way people move in their space, looking at surroundings, are they paintable? Freezing images in her head to remember for later. It's like, this is the perfect way to have a sleuth. And so thus my series was born, the Watercolor Mysteries, the Mysterious Devices series. So it's steampunk mysteries, and the sleuth is a watercolorist, and it helps her to solve mysteries. And in between, you know, crises, she paints teacups to settle her nerves, like pictures of teacups. So that was kind of a different way of bringing what I was doing. I mean, you know, let no craft go unwritten about. So I was bringing that into my stories. And I'll let other people talk before I talk about the great quilting debacle of 2013.
Although ever since I've discovered about this, I cannot wait to hear.
I'd love to jump in and touch on what Shelley just said about using your craft and how she was able to turn this into a positive. I think that it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole when it comes to including your craft or including the things that you love into your stories. I edited a book that had, and this is going to bring it home to Jacob, I edited a story that had a brewing aspect to it. He easily had, I would say, 4.5 pages on how to brew this particular beer. And I basically flagged the entire thing and said, I'm going to give you a paragraph because I'm nice, but you should really only probably have 2 sentences on this because nobody cares. Nobody, I mean, sorry, like, it's a wonderful thing and brewers will care, but the rest of the world does not care about that level of detail. So just dial it back a little bit. That's all. And I had to say the same thing about merchant banking to the same individual. Really, nobody cares about merchant banking except for merchant bankers. So just know how much you can really include when it comes to these little details, because they're supposed to be little details. They're not supposed to be like taking over the story unless that is your character.
And that's where it is so relevant, that context is so relevant. You have to be able to justify what you're talking about. There's a very serviceable romance book called, I believe it's called A Hellion in Her Bed, and I'm completely blanking on the author right now.
Serviceable?
It works very well for exactly what it's doing. I'm not gonna, I can't remember it anywhere near well enough to say I am comfortable recommending it, but I finished it and enjoyed it. It was fine. But it was a damn high praise, but it's the best I can do. I genuinely can't really remember all that much about it. I read it many years ago, but the thing that I remembered about it was that the female protagonist was a brewer. And the male protagonist was also a brewer, different family lines. One was noble, one was not. And some external requirement put on one of them paired them up for some reason, and they were helping save her brewery. And so he comes in with his knowledge. She's got her backstory. I'm describing it. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that.
Of course, Tim knows that.
Tim knows everything. So along the way, the plot, part of the plot that is required to happen to allow their romance to thrive is saving her brewery. So we have to learn certain details about how she's brewing, or where she's sourcing the water, or whatever she's doing that is relevant to how she's brewing her beer, to allow that to develop. But she wasn't going into what type of hops she was using. She wasn't talking about where she was sourcing her grains. The water element came up because water rights are relevant in a city, and people were fighting over who was getting this, something like that. But when you make it relevant, you can talk about it. Otherwise, don't talk about it. Is a very long way of explaining that. Sorry, Jacob, I completely stole your turn in the queue.
The hops are relevant. Yeah, no, that's okay. I was going to say I've never written a story with a brewer in it, so that story was not mine. I just want to say that the story that Deanna had mentioned that had 6 pages of brewing information, that wasn't my story. But I kind of approach it like my thesis novel. The main character was a musician, and most people don't care about music theory, and most people don't understand music theory because it's mostly, math, and it's no fun. So when I think about putting crafting elements into work, I usually approach it like, okay, if this were music theory, I wouldn't put it in. It's what's relevant. It's what's interesting to the reader. No one cares if you have an inverted 6 chord. They just care that the song's pretty. You know what I mean? So that's a roundabout way of just reinforcing everything you said. So never mind.
I'm going through all that right now with music in the book that I'm currently writing. And the hero is making wind chimes for the heroine. And it is a lot more mathy than I ever dreamed to get the pipes to the right note. Who knew? So anyway, that's what I'm struggling with.
Are you making wind chimes as a result?
I am not, but he is, and he needs to know what I need to know and vice versa.
Because that's actually kind of a relevant point to writing and craft, is sometimes doing the thing actually does make a huge difference. I also was working on a story with a musician, only she'd never played guitar before. She was just learning guitar. I had no idea what that was actually like, and I would have had no idea what your hands felt like at the end of learning how to, when you first start to play guitar.
Ow.
Yeah. Ow is right. Had I not actually taken a couple of lessons. So sometimes it is important to try it, but other times maybe not. I would like the wind chimes personally, like as a memento. But
well, my husband used to be he was learning to be a blacksmith, so he's coaching me on how to make the wind chimes.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Fantastic. And that is the really good trick right there. If you don't have the time or resources or genuine interest to pick it up yourself, then the next best thing is to find a friend or family member or a very kind expert in the field who's willing to take some time and get firsthand knowledge about the craft. Googling things, watching things on YouTube, reading the Wikipedia page are all valid steps, but actually having a conversation about a human being who has done the thing themselves is incredibly helpful. Actually, even if you can't get a hold of someone directly, because some crafts are very specific and you don't know everyone, YouTube videos of people actively engaging in a craft and talking about it, I would strongly recommend over any kind of written description, because you learn so much more about the unconscious parts of workflow and hand movements and body language, all of the things, by actually just watching someone do it. Okay, would anyone else like to comment on connecting crafting and their writing, putting crafting in their writing, using it for characterization, etc.?
This is my roundhouse, you guys, wheelhouse, whatever you call it. I guess roundhouses are trains. I must tell you about the great debacle of 2013.
Please.
So I had just landed a book deal for 3 books with Hachette. They were going to give me $50,000 a book. It was about quilting. It's like, oh, this is something I could do. Plus the Amish, which is, I grew up plain, so that was also something I was familiar with. And then I was like partway through the first manuscript, and my editor said, the big sales meeting is coming up. We should do something. And I'm like, okay, does that mean fly me out there to Tennessee so I can meet with a salesman? Or does that mean like I go to the sales meeting? When I did a young adult series for them, they said, we want you to come to the sales meeting dressed as your millionaire characters. And I had to drop a whole bunch of cash on a freaking wardrobe I will never wear again. But anyway, that's a different story. So she said, no, we're going to make presents gifts for all the salesmen connected with your series. And I'm like, you want me to make quilts for all these people? And she said, no, we'll just make pot holders. And so
is she using the royal we? When she says we,
she is using, well, it started out as the royal we. So you will observe, this is my quilt block. So I made, not only did we have quilts in the story, she said, you should put the instructions to make that quilt at the end of every book. We'll divide them in 3 parts over the 3 books, and they'll have to buy all 3 books to get the quilt instructions.
oh my God.
Do you even know how much math is in here?
I do, because I quilt.
1/4 inch seams, 28 pieces in this little thing. Anyway, she said, get started making those pot holders for the salesmen. So I did. I'm still at the day job. I'm trying to work on the manuscript, and I'm in my spare time, I'm making pot holders for the salesmen. Well, the deadline came, and the string of pot holders was not done. So the editor says, send me the instructions and I'll make some too. So Lord knows, 24 pot holders, 28 pieces each. We are a little factory of making pot holders.
Had she ever sewn before?
Yes,
she okay.
She had not quilted, but she had sewn. So, 28 very straight seams. We did not see even a single bump in sales. I never knew what happened to my pot holders, but by golly, the instructions for these are on my website, and I never look at it anymore.
Could you have picked a less complicated quilt pattern?
Well, you see, I'm not going to invent one, so I reverse engineered one from 1864 that I found online.
Oh, yes.
Hence the math. Oh, that was ugly.
I don't know that I would have jumped through. Well, I mean, you do what you have to do, right? But
50 grand
for 150 grand.
Yeah, you do what you have to do.
Yep. So that was my great quilt debacle of 2013.
So I'm going to use this as a great way to pivot into that work-life balance, because crafting takes time. I mean, and a lot of people don't really understand how much time crafting can really take up. You say, oh, I'm going to make a quilt. Well, okay, 60, 80, 100, 200 hours later, maybe you have a quilt, depending on the complexity and your skill and all of the things. I've been working on a blanket that I'm going to be showing you guys later for 2 years intermittently, but things just take time. So how do you guys work out the balance and finding the time to nurture the things that you still want to do?
Well, I kind of have a story that's kind of similar to Shelley's, but not as crazy. Like, no one was paying me for it, but I just brewed like 60 gallons of beer for a wedding, and it just kind of killed my entire life for about 2 months. So I don't know. Balance it's more of like a thing that I can do that's not writing and taking care of a kid and being a dad, So it's more of like a, it's 6 hours where I can just like focus on one thing and like a step-by-step process and not have to be frazzled all over the place. And I'm very thankful to my wife for letting me, do that. But for me,
can I pivot off something you said really quickly?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry to jump in, but you mentioned that something you liked about brewing was having the clear steps to follow and just having that very clearly outlined series of instructions. Do you find any overlap between the things you get most joy out of with brewing and your writing process? Are you more comfortable in writing once you've got a clear, outline, or does the way you plan a brew overlap at all with the way you plan a novel?
So I changed my entire writing process for this current novel that I'm working on to reflect the brewing process, because I did like how first this then this, but it's just a different set of challenges, because I was always like, as Tim can attest, I was a really terrible pantser in Seton Hill, and it got me in some trouble. But I realized that I really do like the joy of discovery writing. So I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with it. with the plotting method for the next book. But I did like, planning it out. I just didn't like how the execution didn't feel as fun in actually writing. So yeah, did that answer your question? I don't.
It absolutely did. Very well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add, or do you mind if I pivot to the other panelists with the same question?
Just pivot like LeBron.
All right. Yeah. All right, then either Shelley or Deanna, would you like to jump in with any overlaps between you and your crafting and writing processes? Deanna.
I'll go. So it's interesting. What's interesting about the creative process that I have for writing is the same as the writing or the creative process I have for painting, meaning they occupy kind of that same headspace for me. So I think a lot about my writing while I'm painting and vice versa, whereas I can't do that when I'm quilting or sewing. It's a very different place for me, and it almost sucks the energy from me for any other creative endeavors. So if I'm quilting, I'm not writing, I'm not painting, I'm not doing anything else. Like, that's the thing that I focus on, and that's the only thing my head has room for. But if I'm painting, I have room for writing, I have room for gardening, I have room for, like, I have to cook all the time, so that's, you got to eat. But it's just, it's such a different creative space for me that it's why I basically stopped sewing as a result. I have probably 8 tubs of fabric in my basement right now, because anybody who does sew knows that just because you don't sew doesn't mean you don't buy fabric.
Yeah, that's my wife.
It is known.
Yeah.
No comment.
So, but that said, I know that before Sunday, where I have a baby shower, where I have to deliver a baby blanket, I will be sewing. So, and I have to get myself prepped for that, because it does take all of my energy. But it's still good. I don't want to make it sound like it's bad. It's just, I know I'm not going to be doing anything else for probably a good week or so afterwards.
Interesting. I find that the process of planning a quilt is kind of like the process of outlining a novel, because I have a very, as anybody who's ever been in my classes knows, I'm an outliner and I have a very orderly mind. Things come in steps, like Jacob was saying. And so the steps of creating a design or putting fabrics together is very similar to, okay, I'll need this and I'll need this, and this is the first thing I write, and this is the first thing that the next thing that comes on top of it, and I can't do this without this. And it's kind of similar. And music is the same way. I think it's the mathematical part of my brain likes quilting and music, because they are so mathematical and orderly, and they don't mess you up.
I was really surprised at how much I actually started enjoying the math of quilting when I first got into it, because I didn't think of myself as a math person, but the satisfaction of it working out, getting it right at the end, when you do the math right, or when you do end up having just the right amount of fabric, or it is going to be big enough to cover the bed, or whatever you're calculating. I'm in the process of finally trying to finish my first quilt top, and I started the top over a year ago, reached a scary point and put it away for a while because I was terrified of ruining what I had done so far to get past it to the next step.
And I'm now corners.
So I was just at a point where I need to square off what I have so far, but it's like twice as big as my cutting mat. So how do you cut something that's straight that doesn't fit on the cutting mat? My brain broke, and I was like, I'm scared and I'm going to break the whole quilt top that I worked so hard on. So I put it away for a while. I'm pulling it out to work on it again now. I still haven't squared it to add the next round of borders, but I'm starting to build the borders for it. So I'm starting to have to math, okay, if this is the size of the quilt top right now, how much border do I have to add all around it to get it to whatever final size I need? It's been really entertaining to like, oh, well, maybe if I do it this way, this will happen, or if I do it this way, and oh, it's kind of getting too square, I want it more rectangular. So it's a weird mathy creativity. I like it. It's been fun. Sorry for all the babbling.
Well, the one thing that I'm noticing a theme here is that everyone here is intimidated by math somehow. So we've all mentioned it. So
Yeah.
Yet we are pushing through and performing crafts that require it.
it's a try-fail cycle, right?
It says a lot about our public
Failing.
education system more than anything. I think we've all been
We're not
traumatized by
failing.
math.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We must overcome the math.
Right. Okay, so before I'm going to decide which direction to pivot here in a minute, but I'm going to do it based on some feedback from the room. If people watching, if there are any of you out there, could you please in the comments let us know if you have any questions, any topics you'd like us to follow through on more. We can either go more directly into the writing side of things and like how to research stuff, how to work it into your story, what type of genres are best for craft stuff or not, or you know, that kind of side of things. Or we can pivot toward, ooh, craft, fun, yay, art, let's play with things, and go, you know, crafty side of stuff. And I would like to leave a little time for some show and tell. If people would like to see the kind of stuff that we've worked on, we can do that if there's interest. So any feedback at all or proof of life would be appreciated. Or we're just talking to ourselves and we can talk about anything. So I'll start bringing up my cats if no one wants to. Thank you, Alex. There are people.
There we go.
Book flowers. Wow.
Nice. Very nice. Great question, Chris. Thank you. Yes, so time to both craft and write. Who wants to jump in on that?
Well,
What?
I kind of put the craft to work for the writing. Like my time is so tightly scheduled that if I'm going to create a thing, it has to be a thing that's going in a book. It has to somehow support the writing of the book. So that's where I am right now. So mostly that happens in the evenings while I'm watching a hockey game or something.
Are you
Except not
still-
now. My team lost.
Oh,
Are you still able to enjoy the actual act of crafting itself as you're doing it, even though you're kind of doing it for this purpose of book research or toward this specific end? Do you still get joy out of the craft, or has it kind of just turned into more work?
Well, I do get joy out of the craft. In fact, when I write a steampunk novel, I dress my characters in costumes that I can make.
wow.
So that when you go to cons and stuff, they're like, oh, that's so-and-so's dress from this book. And you're like, good eye.
Good job.
That's
So-
fantastic.
I do find joy in the things that I'm putting into the books, but I'm always very conscious of like the what is that calculation, return on investment? If I'm going to invest my time in a craft, I'd like the return to be found in the book.
I am a lot like Deanna in the sense that if I'm brewing, I'm probably not going to be writing that day. But I think that it does provide a little bit of a balance because you can't be writing all the time. You'd burn out, you know. So I just make sure that one hobby is not overtaking the rest of them. Just it's more of a checks and balances in my own head. And if I've spent a lot of time like planning what grains or hops I'm going to use or researching hops one day, then I'll be sure to, you know, dial back and write, you know, actual words the next day. Yeah.
I binge. There's no such thing as balance in my life in many ways. I will binge. For example, gosh, I haven't painted in a week and a half, and then in a hour and a half long period, I think I busted out 6 paintings. So I'm a very loose watercolor painter, so that goes pretty fast. And so and it's the same thing with writing. I don't write for 4 months and then I will drop, 40,000 words over the next 6 weeks. And that's the only thing that I think about and the only thing that I do. I'm a binger. There's no such thing as balance. I believe in chaos magic. This is my magic.
If it works for you, man.
I mean,
I need to find a way to make the
healthiest?
chaos
No.
work more, but I'll get there.
You need to find a way to make me make the chaos work better so that I can re-employ you. So
I can do that. So I have to become a life coach to work with my clients to get their lives in order so they can get writing again, so they can hire me to be their editor.
Yes.
Hey, that's like three different rates, though. I mean, you can charge for 3 different.
Talk about math. So, okay, we did get a question from Amy for some recommendations for less mathy crafts. We've been talking a lot about quilting, which does require a bit of math to it, though there are plenty of quilting approaches that don't involve math if you want to just skip over that part. There are definitely ways to do that we can get into after we've mentioned other crafts. I'm going to go for needle felting as the ultimate. You don't need to know anything about anything to needle felt. All you need is wool roving, which is processed wool that is really loose and fluffy and poofy, like cotton balls of wool, essentially. And you take these specifically designed needles that are barbed so that the needles are going different directions. And you just stab the wool and not your fingers, just the wool. And that needle felts. It pulls the fibers closer and closer and closer together so that the wool gets really tight and forms a specific shape. And the way you poke at it condenses it into whatever shape you want it to be. And if you Google needle felting, you'll find a ton of really fun examples. Thankfully, I've managed not to severely stab myself. I got myself once real good right at the beginning, just like a glancing, oh, that was scary moment. And I was very careful after, but you're going to get yourself once. You know, it's a small needle. It's going to hurt for a second and then you're over it and you'll hold your fingers differently next time. But it can be very small scale. You can get kind of big with it. It's because it's mostly pretty small scale. You're usually making like 2-inch figurines kind of thing. It's very inexpensive to get started. And you don't need a lot of space. You don't need a ton of tools, low barrier to entry, which is my favorite kind of craft because I am cheap and lose interest quickly. So I don't want to have to invest a bunch of time and money figuring something out and then bailing 5 minutes later. So needle felting is a great, I don't know, let's just try this kind of thing.
Yeah,
and stabby, you're just stabbing. So good stress relief. Yeah. Sorry, Jacob.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say that the cool thing about brewing is you can get as into it as you want. They sell extract kits for people who are just getting started in like plastic buckets. And it's like you boil water and you add it in at a certain number of minutes and you add your hops and you cool it down and then you put your yeast and you're done. Or you can get tea. It is like making tea, and then the yeast makes it. Like all the fun stuff is all the alcohol, but
oh yeah, that
you can also get the 1 gallon kits. Yes, Deanna, that's correct. And there's a lot of new new smaller companies out there that are like mail order now. I guess I've seen them advertised to me on Facebook. They seem to be pretty low commitment cost to entry. So I mean, but if you want to get like deep into water chemistry, there's whole books on it. So it's kind of like writing. You can, write fan fiction for fun. Not that there's anything wrong with fan fiction, or you can, get granular into plotting your own Brandon Sanderson epic fantasy novel and spend your entire life writing one omnibus book like Pat Rothfuss. There's so.
But you're not bitter.
No, not at all.
You can. One of the other crafty creative things that I do is I play around a lot with polymer clay. I make tiny penguin figurines for Christmas every year. And then I stopped using Facebook, so I don't know what I'm going to do for the penguin lottery this year, but I used to do a penguin lottery where I would just send people a random penguin at Christmas time. The polymer clay is great because it comes in $3 packages, sometimes less depending on where you buy it, sometimes a little bit more. And they come pre-mixed as colors, so they are different colors. And you can make figurines out of it, you can make jewelry out of it, you can make lots of things out of it. It is not food safe. You don't want to make food things out of it, like plates or whatever. But it's you cure it in your oven, so there's no extra equipment required. You can use stuff that you probably have laying around your house as tools if you want to. You could use a fork, a knife, whatever. X-Acto blades, I use those a lot, and you can make whatever you want. And so no math, just whatever's in your head and your imagination. So, recommend.
Excellent. Shelley, do you have any non-math tricks up your sleeve?
Well, I was going to say watercolor, but there's a lot of geometry and fractions in watercolor.
Color theory.
And color theory, yeah. So I
Perspective.
yeah, perspective. Oh, I hate that. It's
Me too.
There.
What about crazy quilting? That would be a thing that doesn't require math.
Yes. So the cool thing,
my
sorry.
orderly brain hates crazy quilting. There has to be a pattern. It's like Mozart. There has to be a pattern, or I don't like it.
So,
but
I
can
would
I show
actually.
you a picture?
Yes, show us a picture.
There's a picture. That's Mount Baker. That's
Oh,
one
gorgeous.
of the
That's great.
places where my stories are set. And then just for complete goofiness, why not have birds?
Oh my God,
birds.
those are adorable.
I love birds. While we're showing off.
You don't have to be mathy. You can just make birds.
Or you can
look at how pretty.
Flowers.
Yeah.
So, watercolor is great.
And it's sort of low entry. You need a piece of paper and a brush and some pigments and water.
You can do watercolor for under $30, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think watercolor is a more cost-friendly, more wallet-friendly craft than some others you can get into, because you can go quite a while before you want to start upgrading into crazy expensive pigments or really high-end brushes. You can get pretty far with stuff in the dollar aisle at Michael's if you need to.
Yeah, we're not doing the sable brushes from Russia here.
Right. And that's something worth bringing up. I was kind of going to pivot toward that anyway, is the cost behind crafting, because we talk about, oh, crafting, it's so great and it's this great stress relief and everyone should do it. But there's a big monetary barrier to a lot of different crafts. Crazy quilt sewing is a great way to quilt without having to do any mathing. However, you do need to own a sewing machine, and those can be expensive if you don't already have one. Deanna, I wanted to hear your bloody finger story, and now I'm a little worried about people passing out listening to your bloody finger story. So
it's not quite that bad, but it did happen twice. It was not to me. All right, so my friend Anna sewed over her finger. Okay, that's the TLDR. She has a Bernina, and when you're sewing very closely, there's not a great, like some of the sewing machines, it's pretty hard to get your finger underneath the needle because the foot is wider. Well, her foot was very narrow and her finger went right under. She sewed over her finger. The problem was that she'd been drinking bourbon.
Oh boy.
And B, she went like this with her finger afterwards. So I had blood spatter like this around my house. So we made a rule going forward. There will be no bourbon and sewing.
Very good rule.
You can drink wine and sew, but you can't drink bourbon and sew. That's just good.
Fair. That's just common sense.
I will also take this. Did come in handy when we had to clean it.
Well, I mean, you got to be practical. I will mention, this is my standard friendly moment to say, be careful using rotary cutters if you do get into sewing or quilting. Rotary cutters are those cutters that are the round wheel of a blade on a handle that you see people, they can just do real fast cuts with.
Cut pizza with.
Yeah, it's a giant pizza cutter for fabric.
But
exactly. But sharper, a lot sharper. So guys, if you're going to use a rotary cutter, be careful. Don't cut your fingers, and put the safety back on every time you put it down. Never leave the blade exposed. Okay, so it's like crafting. You need like warning labels everywhere.
Well, this is the beginning of a cozy mystery series, right?
Right?
1,000 ways of killing people in your sewing basket.
Yeah, it's a clue mystery. It's killed with a rotary cutter in the quilting room. Who done it? I will. So back to cost. My main craft is Tim. You'll never know. My main craft is crochet. I am pretty obsessed with crochet. I really, really like doing it. I tried to pick up knitting, and it didn't make a lot of sense. Mostly because I first learned from my mom, who learned from her aunt, who knits backwards. So I learned her way, and then anyone else that ever tried to show me or any YouTube video just looked really wrong because it wasn't what my mom taught me. It was a whole thing. Anyway, I like crochet. It's one single hook. It's really simple. However, and so I will say, yeah, you can go to any craft store and get a single skein of worsted weight yarn and one single hook and start trying to crochet something. And it's very inexpensive and very simple. But then you're going to want to actually do a real project, and then the next project and the next project, and you're going to start buying yarn. And yarn can get expensive. And just like with sewing or quilting, you're going to just, get in there little. And then, yeah, fabric is incredibly expensive and can vary. I mean, you've got your cheap worsted weight yarn that can be very, very inexpensive. You've got your high-end merino wool that's incredibly expensive, or Angora rabbit fur, or, just organic cotton, fancy stuff. Like, however you want to work it, there are plenty of ways to lose a lot of money to the crafting industry. Oh, yes. Sorry, Kathy recommends there's a special kind of yarn that has come out somewhat recently that was specifically designed to be finger done.
Yes.
You use your fingers instead of a tool to do the crochet / knit, whatever they're calling it thing, which is another great thing. But again, those skeins of yarn, they look really big and the yarn is really bulky, but they only go so far, and you need a lot of skeins to make a whole blanket. And it can add up quickly. So just as a fair warning, I encourage crochet, but sorry, we've got a question in the comments. Do you guys have any specific books or writings that correlate or pay homage to or with your own personal crafting writing interests? Something that says this is the best of both worlds to you personally. Oh, good question, John. Thank you. All right, Deanna has Draw Your Day.
It's an inspiring guide to keeping a sketch journal, and I specifically bought it to help inspire me, because one of the things that I am working on, not next, I have to finish my second book in my series, and then ideally the third book in the series. But once I get past the third book, the goal is to make Sophie's Guide to Dimensions, and it will be a sketch journal. So that is ultimately why I started painting, and why I'm learning how to draw better, is because of that. And this is what I would recommend. It's great.
Nice. Thank you, Shelley. Those are fantastic.
Well,
plugs.
I understood the question to be, how do we incorporate craft into our own writing, and what are some examples? Maybe I read the assignment wrong.
I think I'm going to take it either way. I think they're both valid. Cat herding is less of a hobby and more of a chore.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. Sorry, I'm just kind of remembering where we're at.
No, you're good.
Wonderful.
But
All right.
as far as like the industry attraction, the whole cozy mystery genre seems to be really super focused on crafts and whatever you happen to love, and you can get your sleuth to do it, or murder victims to do it, or wrap it in thematically somehow. There's probably an audience for it in the cozy mystery world.
I just remembered, Shelley, you might actually remember this better than me. My protagonist's dad was a blacksmith in my thesis, and I was gonna work blacksmithing into that. Oh, and my female protagonist was an artist. She drew. That was like a thing. She kept a sketchbook and everything. Hey guys, I prepared for this panel, I swear. I put that book in a drawer a long time ago. I completely forgot that I did have those elements in there. And for me, that was actually really important, that it was a young adult fantasy novel, a young girl going through all sorts of upheaval, and just her having that journal as an outlet to both distract herself from the things going on and also try to process the things going on was a really useful tool for me to use thematically in the novel to deal with all the emotional stuff she was going through. So that answered someone's question at some point along the way, right? All right, guys, we've got a little bit of time left. Does anyone else want to do any other kind of show and tell stuff? And then via the show and tell, if anyone sees anything that they have follow-up questions on, that they want to learn more about a craft or how someone did something or whatever, please in the comments, go for it, Deanna.
I have a question for Jacob. So you had a beer that you showed us at the beginning of the session.
Yep.
It is partially empty. I'm disappointed it's not more empty, but I'm proud of you at the same time. What kind of beer is it?
So I brewed this beer. It's a New England IPA. It's brewed with Brewer's 2 row malt, which is, it doesn't matter. Honey malt.
I know what you're talking about. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
But we don't, Deanna.
Yeah.
There are more than just you in the conversation. Play to the crowd.
Yeah.
You guys can talk later.
Can I at least know what kind of hops?
It's all mosaic hops in this one. So
Hops are delicious.
they're the best, honestly. They're very good. Yeah.
Nice.
Excellent.
And
Thank
it's
you for indulging.
White Labs Coastal Haze is the yeast.
Nice. I might be writing this down.
I can send you the recipe.
She's gonna steal your brew.
It's all right.
I can't. I'm not likely to feed Jacob and be able to taste the brew. So therefore, the next best thing that I could do is, I don't even know where you live, dude.
Ohio.
Oh, well, you're not that far away.
Yeah, you're in Chicago, right?
Okay,
right.
work this out later, guys. Moderator back again. Let's move this along.
Can I show something for show and tell?
Please do. I would love to see it.
I'm writing Regencies, and which of course requires costuming for events. But my friend Camille Elliott, who is also a Regency writer, I don't know if these are knitted or crocheted, but she made me opera gloves to go with my costume. I mean, can you imagine the teensy weensy little microscopic stitches in here?
Oh my gosh.
That's made out. That's thread weight
Yep.
yarn that
it's
she used,
thread.
right? That's
cotton thread.
That looks knit. I'm gonna guess knitting based
I
on what I can see through the screen.
can't tell a knit from a crochet unless
That's
I saw them
stunning.
through the needles. But I mean,
Fair.
talk about a labor of love.
Yes,
have
that
to
is
do-
stunning.
All I have to do is put little pearl buttons on at the wrist, and I'm good to go for my next event.
You need
My mom had
you need
a-
a pair of dirtle socks too.
Oh, I have those. I bought them in
I
Germany.
mean, yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Oh, I'm very sorry. He
You're
just
lucky I
keeps getting
haven't got
louder.
a chicken.
I'll show off some things that I have here. I also put together a little like slideshowy thing if people want to see more stuff, but we'll get to that in a minute. The very first quilting project I ever finished was this bag that I made of a bunch of quilted pieces. And so I made the little cat square pattern first, and this was all using up scraps that I had put together from all sorts of other things. So it's very, very scrappy. So the two little cat guys are pockets that I put on there. And then you can't quite see, I was just kind of practicing trying to do quilting lines in different directions on the fabric. So you can't quite see that, but it's technically reversible because I overachieve, and why would do a boring lining when you could do a pretty lining? And so I've got patchwork pockets on the inside as well. Two little guys, and then the big old bag in fun, bright colors. And then my piece de resistance, the crochet piece that I would probably run back into the house for to pull out in a fire.
Oh my
is-
gosh.
Oh my God, I love this one.
Wow.
Bubbles.
This is about halfway through this lovely, amazing blanket. I am so thrilled. It's called Mandala Madness is the pattern. It's available for free online, which is astounding. So someone made this whole pattern for free and released it for free. And then someone else, I can actually get back in frame, made YouTube videos going through the entire pattern step by step, showing you visually how to do the pattern. And that is also available for free online. So crafters are wonderful people. They're amazing. God bless every single one of them. Yeah, I've done a lot of really amazing crochet stuff over the years I'm pretty proud of, but this blanket's going to be like the thing they hang instead of a tombstone. And yes, Ravelry.com is the place to go for knitting and crochet and weaving, apparently, but I haven't gotten to do weaving since high school because looms. Yeah, knitting, crochet patterns, Ravelry.com, and Leah was kind enough to put that in the chat. Ravelry is a great resource. Quilting, honestly, just Google and you're going to find more than you could possibly know what to do with. That's my problem. How do you pick a pattern? There are infinite possibilities.
Pinterest.
You can find this one on my website because I know you guys want to make these.
Yes.
Shelley, I just might. Here
Penguins.
are the
I love
penguins in question. This one is the naughty penguin.
And Sculpey really is, that's a great, like, very little barrier to entry because all you need is the actual Sculpey and then an oven, I think. And then everything else is just your hands. And
I miss the penguins.
They're so cute. My God.
They'll make an appearance at hopefully the 2022 In Your Right Mind fundraising raffle. So
wonderful.
Stay tuned. So yes.
Any other questions from the audience? Any other commentary? You want to see some more pictures?
Talk about?
Screw it. I'm going to show some pictures. Let's see if I can figure out how to screen share.
I want to see
I can show you
book flowers.
I can show you this as well. This would be the armor that was created.
Holy cow.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Just so Blake could see what it felt like when you fell in it. It's not good, by the way. It doesn't feel good. I could have told them that without all of this. But it is metal plate. It actually also has Kevlar in it. So in theory, it is bulletproof. There's buckles on the side. All of these can be adjusted, and there's buckles down the front. Yeah. So this is on display in our house all the time. He also made the chainmail to go with it, but yeah, you want to talk about an overachieving bit of ridiculousness. Like, nobody needs that much, like, crafting for their book. There's tons of research on this.
Holy smokes.
And this is where I think it's great to chime in with the balance between falling down that rabbit hole and actually getting the writing done. Crafting is supposed to be a fun, enjoyable stress relief or a form of entertainment. It is not supposed to be the thing you do to avoid writing.
It's
unless you need to for a mental health break or whatever, that's fine. But like, you know, priorities. Okay, we are running low on time. Anyone have anything else? You want to say anything else? You want to see some pictures? Okay, pull up some pictures while we do.
We appreciate you guys coming. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. This is wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Fun times.
Ooh.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to do that. So, big black screen to then move. So these are some crochet examples. The two very brightly colored things, second over from the left, are the two sides of the bag. If that wasn't clear, I don't know why I had to clarify that. Those were a lot of fun to make. The Wonder Woman hat was entertaining. That was my first color work doing that way, so that was very satisfying. And then these are all my stuffed, or not all, these are some stuffed animal type things I did. The little frog toward the upper left that's needle felting. That's pretty much the only finished thing I made and said, that's amazing, it's so perfect, I can't ever make anything that good again. And I didn't do any more needle felting. So I'll come back to it someday. But all the 3D things were really fun. I'm very proud of that DSLR camera. It's life size and real, and the little button that spins on the DSLR camera to change different settings, on mine, it actually spins as well, which I was super impressed by. That was a very well-written pattern. I was blown away, but I apparently put it together, parts were inside out when I started putting it together. So it's actually mirror image of what a real DSLR looks like. So the buttons are on the wrong side. So it's very custom. And then that's that first quilt. There you go. So that's that quilt top that I'm still in the process of working on. You can see that left edge where I need to square it off, and that's what I'm terrified of doing. And then some cross stitching in the middle that I did there. Oh, hey, for cross stitchers who are curious, you are supposed to buy embroidery thread and then pull those 6 strands of embroidery thread apart into single or pairs of strands, and then cross stitch with those thinner strands of thread, and not all 6 at once, which I didn't find out until 2/3 of the way through that skull cross stitch. And you can kind of see toward the bottom that the stitches aren't as dense. So I started using less thread. Because I didn't know that. And then that was a ceramic piece I did back in high school when I had access to ceramics. And then I also got into floral arranging, which I find very fun and relaxing because it's not only fun and crafty, it's pretty and it smells good, and all the petals are really soft. And everyone loves flowers. So doing flower arranging and then showing it to other people is very entertaining. That wreath on the left I actually made, that's out of dollar store fake flowers. And dollar store floral wire and tape to make it. I made that for a friend for a costume for one of the In Your Right Mind balls at the hotel the first day of the con, and I was incredibly stressed getting to the con that year, and that wreath really calmed me down, which was super awesome. Getting to make that was my happy place right there. So, and then I got to do high school metalsmithing. This is what got me into college, which was pretty cool. And then I haven't gotten to do it since. So yeah, the little box on the bottom right is about 3 inches long, fits in my palm, I think, and won me an award through a scholastic art competition, like a nationwide thing. And it was on display at the Corcoran Art Gallery in Washington, D.C. for a little while, which was very cool.
Wow.
Golly.
And again, that's what got me into college, because I was applying to art school, and not many high schools have metalsmithing departments. So I think I just kind of got to get ahead of the game. But hey, that was some fun stuff. Thanks for looking. Crafting is awesome. You can create lots of really cool things with it.
Cool.
And we're out of time, pretty much.
Yeah.
So any last little bits? Okay, thank you everyone for participating. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you guys in the audience got anything out of it. Mostly go craft, use your hands, do something fun. It's wonderful.
Feed your brain.
Yes,
Yeah.
hands are good. Wonderful. Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.